I love that. Ah,
Never gets tiring.
hi, this is Will Gray 42, and we're back once again. I have Sir Michael Gray with me. And today we're going to be talking about single two-handed weapons. Now, with the single one-handed weapon, there is one pivot point and one spot to control it. It's all done with one hand. But once you add that second hand in, all of the rules change. You now have 3 different pivot points with 2 different controls. Now you have, this is your pivot point. You have this is your pivot point. You also have a center pivot point that allows you to move around it. Now, with those 3, you're going to have to work a little bit on deciding on which pivot to use at the right time. But some things that you should know right away. When one hand is the pivot, the other hand is the control. This hand is controlling the pivot. It controls where it moves. Or it controls where it moves while this one is the pivot. When you're using a single pivot spot instead of a double pivot spot, remember where the force is coming from. When you're striking, say give me like a 1, and this is the pivot point. It's going to have a different strike if this is the pivot point and you bring it over here. The strike changes. That is one of the versatilities of using a two-handed weapon, is the versatility of swing. Plus, say for points being you do a standard 1. The strike comes in at a 1. Now, people who are either watching the blade or watching your hand are going to see a 1. Now the trick is with a slight movement of this hand, that 1 becomes a 6. And the hand still goes through the pivot the same way. But as the pivot is moved, the control of it is changed. So they will still see a 1 strike even though it's coming in at a 6. Another way of using a mental attack along with a physical attack at the same time. So, I have Mikey here today to help us out. Sir Michael.
Yes.
You use longsword.
Yes, I do.
Now, what are the things that you have found are the advantages to longsword?
The unknown component.
What about the disadvantages?
Don't let them get close to you.
He's right on most points. Take a ready position. As long as we are here, I have a shorter blade, and he is out of my attack zone. Yet, at the same time, I'm in his attack zone. He can reach me. This is an advantage of longsword. The disadvantage is just literally the polar opposite. If I can step into him, all of that length has gone into uselessness. In the exception of defense, he can now use this as a wall that moves around him to protect himself. And he can also, besides moving the wall, he can move around with the wall until he can bring that strike out and push me back into and out of my attack zone. This is the main strategy of longsword, is keep him at a distance. The idea is to keep yourself out of their attack zone while keeping them in your attack zone. Tricky. Very, very tricky.
Very, very tricky.
But if you can maintain that, no matter what the strikes happen, they'll swing and they can't hit you. They're out of range. It doesn't matter what cool, nifty thing they do. You can still hit them and they can't hit you. So be warned about that instep. Now, with the instep, like we said, you can use a wall. You can also do it inverted. So you're holding the weapon with the blade down. This allows you maneuverability this way. Inverting your weapon for a fight is at the same time that it's exactly the same. That's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 4. It moves differently. And you have to think with a different part. Now, if you can do that, go for it. But be careful when inverting a weapon. It does put you at a slight disadvantage. So, now we're going to do a slight demonstration of using longsword and two-handed weapon. And we'll go from there. Oh! Mikey hit the pole! Well,
That would be a disadvantage.
something else about longsword. Not good in tight places. Now, in this particular case, it was a railing that got him. But it can be a tree. It could be another opponent. It could be one of your own people on your own side.
Could be one of your own limbs.
Oh yes, that's happened a lot. So, homework for everybody tonight. When you have a weapon that allows you two hands on the boffer, I want you to practice having this be your pivot, then this be your pivot. Strike using that as a pivot, and then switch it, and strike using the other one as the pivot. Then work on double pivots. Double pivots is double motion, so you can keep a continuous swing. Alright, this is Will Gray 42. This is Sir Michael LeGray, and we'll see you soon.